Okay, so let us start our discussion, and I welcome you all to this uh, session on finite element method, and we will be taking a new route to the exploration of this field of finite element method. We will first explore a little bit about numerical solution and the nature of numerical computation, and then go into a little bit of linear algebra concepts which are essential for constructing any valid approximation, and then study a little bit more about some of the numerical tools that we will employ in the development of finite element method, and then we will move on to the main subject of under discussion, that is finite element method. So to start with, we already discussed about the nature of scientific computations and how it is uh, different from uh, what we perceive. So the reality on a digital computer is different from what we think should be according to our basic training in mathematics and our understanding of numbers. So things in a digital computer are not really the uh, same thing. So we discussed this about the error in computation and loss of precision during the process of computation, and after a while the loss of precision and error in computation is so much that it is beyond redemption. The result is beyond redemption, and one has to take care to avoid such propagation of errors while performing any numerical computation. Finite element method is just one such uh, application of numerical computation or scientific computation. These problems can arise in several different fields. In fact, it may be very instructive for all of you to go at to look at this particular website. Let me just find it out for you, exact URL. Please uh, have a look at this particular collection of some engineering disasters which are directly linked to bad numerical computing. And one of the examples that have been discussed is actually directly from a finite element analysis, inaccurate finite element analysis. I am not saying it is wrong finite element analysis. I am only saying that the result is because of inaccurate finite element analysis. and that led to uh, crash of an oil platform, oil rig in Norway, and fortunately it was not yet operational. It just crashed almost immediately after it was constructed, and it was not operational, so no lives were lost, but this entire thing led to loss of several billions of dollars in revenue. So because it can be very catastrophic, and other examples you would see, they one is from Patriot missile failure, and the other one is from the collapse of or explosion of Ariane rocket, disaster that just blew up uh, immediately, shortly after takeoff. So all of these can be a very handy resource for keeping in mind the importance of careful adherence to the basic principles of numerical computing, good practices for numerical computing. So, okay. So you may have to live with this kind of cascading of screen. That makes it. This makes it easier for me to switch between different windows, and you will always see what is uh, whichever window I am projecting or I am working at. So, so we were discussing about this error propagation in numerical computation, and even for such a simple example of square root and then squaring it back runs into trouble in as few steps as the ninth step. So it just took 8 computations to corrupt the operations beyond redemption. So the problem is, of course, because of the way numbers are stored in a digital computer. The digital computers, the basic information processing machines, they are finite in size and speed, and obviously infinity can only be approximated. And when I say infinity, it is not just the endpoints minus infinity and plus infinity, the range of numbers, but it is also the numbers that you can store in between any two numbers. So it's impossible to pack in infinite numbers between any two real numbers, as any sane person with basic understanding of mathematics and numbers would probably argue. But unfortunately, this doesn't hold on a digital computer. And what makes matters worse is these are not the only numbers. Uh, we actually have to deal with different types of numbers, let's say integers and float, and even in a floating point representation there can be multiple representation, at least a float and double, single precision and double precision, which are commonly referred to as float and double in C and C++, and a single precision and double precision in Fortran, and similar nomenclature in other languages. So, and there is the then beyond double precision, which is actually accurate which can retain accuracy up to 14 places of decimal. If we need further more accuracy in the digits, then there is something called extended precision, but that is rarely, if ever, deployed. So even for floating point representation, there are two types, float and double, and then there is integer. And even in integer, there are several different ways integers are represented. And all of them are available on the uh, computer to make just for add to our confusion. And the operation arithmetic rules governing these integers and floating point or real numbers, they are different. They don't behave in the same way. So 10 by 11 as an integer division, the result is of course 0. The fractional part is thrown away, and 10.0 divided by 11.0, that is a floating point operation, and the fractional part is retained. Then we come to the basic dichotomy between the operation. Human beings understand the base 10 number system because ancient prehistoric human beings, they started counting on their fingers and in multiples of 10 because we have 10 fingers. So we almost that kind of understanding is almost hardwired into our brain. We understand numbers as decimal numbers very naturally, but it is extremely difficult to design a reliable computer architecture or circuitry, electronic circuit, which can distinguish between such 10 different levels of voltage in a circuit. Uh, because this is what is going to a circuit, electric circuit can only detect either difference in voltage or difference in current. So different levels, and there has to be some mechanism to sense that difference to be able to represent these different 10 different states for possibility to handle decimal numbers. It so happens that it is very difficult and very complicated uh, and unreliable circuitry to do anything other than recognize just two levels, that is on and off, whether there
Hello.
is a yes.
Hello, sir. Then the best utilization of a circuitry is matlab, how much higher number of voltages. The best utilization of a circuitry then. Only 0 or 1 is not the best utilization of the circuitry, right?
Yes, that is why it was earlier computers with they were designed with a hexadecimal base system because the storage was very expensive at that time. So one word length could be used to encode 16 different information. But as the storage cost reduces, and it's always a play between trade-off between reliable circuit and economic storage. So if I have only uh, two levels to differentiate on and off, the circuitry is very simple. The logic gates that you probably studied Boolean algebra, they come in very handy, and they are very easy to operate and easy to devise. And the only fallout is you need to large number of binary digits to represent a reasonably large decimal number. But with reduce in storage cost, this is a manageable trade-off. That is much more beneficial. It is much more important to have uh, a reliable circuit than saving on cost at the cost of getting stuck with something that breaks down very often.
Hello sir, then my question is for different potentials, if they use hexadecimal, let's say they use a hexadecimal, then circuitry, the number of circuitry usually will be lesser than binary. Then how can we be made up to laptops which are very small circuitries?
See, that goes in the large scale integration. The chip size is reducing, right? So that is a development or advancement in the manufacturing technology, the processor manufacturing technology, fabrication. So we are now talking about when if we look at the latest microprocessor, the computer chip, the chip size that we are talking about is runs into nanometers, right? So that is something that
Yes
is
sir.
you are almost talking in terms of almost approaching the atomic scale. So that allows you to pack a very large number of those transistors and logic gates into a very compact microchip, and that allows you to pack in much more information and much more processing. Was that your question?
Yes sir. One more question arises in my mind. So
Uh-huh.
why we use only 220 volts and 50 to 60 hertz light? We can use lesser, right?
Okay, that is actually a question on electrical power distribution. Uh, there are national standards for that. Uh, if you recall, I mean, the basic rule is current flows from high potential to low potential. So if you need to transmit, then you need to account for losses, etc. The potential is dropping by when the current flows through a resistor, the potential drops. So you don't want to end up in a situation where the current will not flow on its own. So the transmission happens at higher potential. The voltage is much higher. I mean, if you look at the uh, national grid, there they transmit in thousands of volts. Then it is then you use a step down transformer to come down to uh, regional distribution where it goes to 440 volts, and then it comes to domestic distribution where again another step down transformer is used, and the domestic supply is 220 volts. Now there is a question about what is this magic figure of 220 or 440 volts. It would probably make more sense just to say 200 volts or 400 volts. Uh, that is true. There doesn't seem to be any uh, solid technical reason for that. It is, I mean, we just have this additional increment of 220 volts. That 20 additional is probably just to as a buffer to protect against any losses, because all devices are uh, designed to operate in a certain range of voltage. So if the voltage fluctuation happens, then they should always happen. If some voltage fluctuation happens during transmission, that would still be able to maintain within the supply would still be within the range of operation parameters of electrical appliances. So that is my understanding about the power distribution, and of course that's a national call that depends on the what is the quality of transmission lines, what is the losses and transmission losses and distribution losses. Accordingly, on the basis of that, you choose voltage and frequency, right? So and once you decide that, it is extremely difficult to change it overnight. So now that we have 220 volt domestic supply, everything is designed for 220 volt and 50 hertz. It is impossible to change it to anything else. That would be a huge cost that would have to be incurred, right? And probably all of you know that the domestic supply AC supply in United States is 110 volt and 60 hertz. So that is according to their own design of the entire entire distribution system, and how what are their transmission and distribution losses of the power system. So coming back to our digital computers, so digital computers have to do this kind of uh, translation every time, because the input by a human being to the digital computer is going to be in based in number system, and the output has to be in based in number system, because binaries are not understood by uh, most of the human folks. Very few people can actually make sense of binary. So it serves well to understand the complexity or additional complexity that arises because of this uh, binary coded decimal. So we want all the operations to be performed in base 10 number system, but those are coded in binary representation. So just to put everything in proper context, this is the basic conceptual design of a digital computer that we all use, and commonly referred to as von Neumann architecture, named after the mathematician John von Neumann, who first proposed this, and it is called the stored program architecture. The meaning is the instruction and the data, the instruction for the computer and the data on which those instructions have to be applied, they all store in the same device. So the same storage space is used to store the program as well as the data. So here you have this central processing unit, which consists of basic control unit, program control unit, which handles the issues the instructions, sequence of instructions, and this is a basic arithmetic logic unit, which basically performs the operations. And then there is a very small amount of very high speed memory which is inbuilt into the processor itself, and those are called registers. So if you uh, have some exposure to C programming language or C++ programming language, then you will find, you might recall that there are certain uh, variables which you can actually label them as registers. So that is essentially a request to store these variables into the register memory, which is very fast. And if the space is not available, then of course they will be stored in the RAM or whatever is available. So next comes the random access memory, which is called the main memory, and then the secondary memory or the storage, which is the uh, bulk storage that we have. I mean, in common parlance, it is referred to as hard disk. And then there are peripheral devices, and all of these communicate with the basic central processing unit through this communication bus. And these are the interconnects. So there are information exchanges happening all through at every channel, and this is how the basic digital computer works. And if you look at it, this is the hierarchy. Uh, the more distance a particular component is from the central processing unit, the slower is its seek time or access time. So registers are the fastest storage area that can be accessed. Then comes random access memory, and which is faster than the hard disk, but it is slower than the registers. And then comes the bulk storage or the hard disk, and then after hard disk comes uh, a series of peripheral devices, your keyboard, mouse, display, printer, or even optical devices. So they are the slowest to uh, be accessed. So now we come to the basic idea of how the integers are represented. So just for an example, I just took a field width of 3 bits. So the integers can be, these can be populated in 3 ways. So 000, uh, please, there is a phone call, I need to attend to that. Okay, so this is the all possibilities that we can have. So each bit can have two values, either 0 or 1. So in all we can have total 8 representation, uh, 2 raised to the power 3, right? So there are 3 bits and each bit can have 2 representations, so 2 raised to the power 3, and that's what the 8 representations are there. And if we try to convert these binary digits into decimal equivalent, these go from, uh, if I call it unsigned decimal, unsigned numbers, which represent only positive side. So they start from 0 and end up at 7. So total of 8 representations. But as we know, integers are essentially positive as well as negative. So how do we decide if the numbers are to be, if the integers have to be uh, represented in both positive and negative direction? So what do we do? So one approach, very simple approach, is just the way we write integers. That integer is essentially, there are two components to an integer representation. There is a magnitude and there is a sign associated with it. So that is the simple thing, and that is what we adopt, sign and modulus form. What we do is the leftmost bit, which is called the most significant bit, MSB, the leftmost bit. This is the leftmost bit, and this is called MSB, most significant bit. And the rightmost bit is called the least significant bit because its multiplier value or face value is the smallest. So, most significant bit, this is considered to be the power of -1. So this entire number is considered as, these two bits are represented as the modulus, and this is considered as the sign bit, and the number is -1 raised to the power value of sign bit multiplied by the number represented by these two remaining bits. So if by that convention the numbers that we have here is, because -1 raised to the power 0 is going to be +1. So these numbers are 0, 1, 2 and 3. And then we have uh, another set of four numbers starting with 1 in the most significant bit. So minus 1 raised to the power 1 is going to be minus 1, and then we have those same set of numbers, so minus 0, minus 1, minus 2, minus 3. So very simple, very appealing, although a little bit of uh, uncomfortable or situation that we have to now live with two representations of zeros. So we have plus 0 and a negative 0, positive 0 and a negative 0. So apart from that, there is no problem whatsoever with this representation as long as it is only used for counting. The arithmetic, the addition, etc., the arithmetic operation using sign and modulus form is a little bit tedious. The circuitry again becomes much more complicated if this kind of representation is to be used. Then it comes looking at the ease of computation, ease of arithmetic, performing arithmetic on integers. We now look at 2's complement. So this is represented as unsigned number, whatever is the unsigned number, and we subtract it from some definite higher power of 2. So if you look at it, if I increase, let's say, subtract it from that is called 2's complement. So it is a complement of another higher power of 2. So if we do that, then these four numbers, they start with 0, 1, 2 and 3, and then this becomes minus 4, then this becomes minus 3, minus 2, minus 1. So how does this work? I mean, there is a very systematic operation. So these are 2 raised to the power 3 possibilities. So what we do is essentially subtract these numbers from in a way that is related to as a complement. What if we add these two, what should be added to these numbers, that it will become 2 raised to the power 4, which is outside the range of these numbers that can be represented. More on that overflow in a short while. And then third one is of course excess k. Excess k is like the shift of origin that we all know in coordinate geometry. If you have a frame of reference, you can always change the origin to some other point, and that is what is done. I mean, a constant number is just subtracted. So we had origin here, we just move the origin to this point, and when we shift this origin here, then the numbers become minus 4, minus 3, minus 2, minus 1, 0, and then 1, 2 and 3. So this is called excess k notation, and the value of this shift parameter is 2 raised to the power n minus 1, where n is the number of bits, uh, number of bytes, and there are two types of integer representation normally available: short integer, that is 2 bytes long, and a long integer which is 4 bytes long. I mean, that is the minimum that is prescribed in the IEEE standard. Individual computer manufacturer may adopt larger storage to denote these short and long integers, but this is the minimum that they have to provide. And then when we talk of integer arithmetic, so all integer arithmetic can be reduced to a sequence of additions. Subtraction of two integers can be represented as addition of a negative integer. Multiplication can be thought of as a repeated addition. Division is can be thought of as repeated subtraction, and subtraction, as I said, is addition of a negative integer. So everything related to integer arithmetic can be represented in terms of a single circuit that can add two numbers. So you just need an addition circuit. and rest of it is all logical arrangement. And addition of integers is exact on computer. There is no loss of precision in the integer arithmetic, as long as the result can be accommodated in the assigned bit width. So see, we have these 3 bits. So if I add 1 at the end, for example, if I have 111, and if I add 1 to the final number, then the result is going to be, let's say, if I have these 3 digits as 1, 1, 1, and then I add one more 1 in the least significant bit, then what is the result going to be? So 1 plus 1 is going to be 0 here, plus 1 carryover, that is first power of 2, and then again 1 plus 1, that will be 0 here, carry over 1, and 1 plus 1, that will be 0 here, and then carry over 1. Now this 1, there is no space to store this carryover bit, and the result will be stored, will be reported as 0, 0, 0. So this is similar to your speedometer or the mileometer on your vehicle. There is a when there used to be analog mileometer, so those wheels would, there are individual numbers running from 0 to 9, and after some time, after the vehicle runs for a certain mileage, then the result would again go from 99999, and then the next result that you see is 00000. It is a similar kind of a thing. So if the result cannot be accommodated in the assigned bit width, then that carryover bit is lost, and that is a loss, and results, I mean, that can never be recovered. So this is the overflow of carry bit. Just another example. So no space to store the carry bit, and result of computation is wrapped back into the range of admissible numbers. So this is the possibility of wrong result happening even if all the operations that you perform are correct. The wrong result that you get is just because the space that is allocated to storage of the result is not enough, and the computer will store whatever it can store, and it will just throw away whatever is doesn't fit in the size, and the user will not even be aware of what has happened, and results may not make sense. Then we come to integers. Of course, they are, as I said, they are whole numbers, and all integer arithmetic is exact as long as the carryover is carry bit, uh, as long as the result can be accommodated in the bit, the field width that is assigned for storage of these integers. But for scientific computation, we often deal with very large numbers, I mean, very large range of numbers, and it is impractical and almost foolish to try and work with these numbers as integer representation just because the integer arithmetic is exact. Just to give you an example, gravitational constant is of the order of 10 raised to the power minus 11, and the Young's modulus of steel is of the order of 10 raised to the power 11. So I just picked up two constants which can give you an idea about the scale of numbers that we deal with. So on the one hand we are looking at 10 raised to the power minus 11, on the other hand we are looking at 10 raised to the power 11. If I go back to mass of electron, I am looking at 10 raised to the power minus 23 or something of that kind. And similarly, Planck's constant, etc., they also go into very large numbers. So the idea is we need to, for scientific computation, we need to work with numbers which span a very large range in magnitude and of course in sign as well. So a new representation is required. I mean, this simple cannot, integer arithmetic, integer representation cannot work. So what is done is, what we use is scientific notation, that is the this separator between the whole part and the fractional part. In the based in number system, we call it a decimal point, and the numbers, this mantissa can be changed by suitable change in the exponent field. For example, this same number can be represented as 20.7 multiplied by 10 raised to the power 10. So this decimal point can be made to float by suitable change in the exponent field, and that is why this representation is called floating point representation. So the separator between the whole part and the fractional part of mantissa can be floated to any position by a suitable change in exponent, that is the floating point representation. And the standard representation of a floating point number in base b, whatever that base number may be, would be, let's say, some whole number b0, plus or minus, it can be plus positive or negative, and then there is a separator, and then there is fractional part, and this is to be multiplied by whatever is the base and raised to the power whatever exponent field is. Now the standard representation requires that this whole part should be a number between 1 and b minus 1, where b is the base. So that means in case of decimal number system, the whole part should be always between 1 and 9, anything between 1 and 9. So if I write some number as a 0.123, that is not a standard representation. I need to write it as 1.23 multiplied by 10 raised to the power minus 1. That would be standard decimal representation of that 0.123. Right? Now this standard representation, definition of standard representation of a floating point number brings up a very interesting observation. What happens if the base of the number system is 2? Any ideas? If the base of the number system is 2, then what happens to the standard representation, the whole part of the standard representation?
Sir, we only have 1 to b minus 1. If base is 2, then there will be only one number, 1
Yes.
to 1.
So there is only going to be 1. Right? So remember this. So in standard representation, there is only going to be 1 here. B0 has only one option, that is, it has to be 1. So 1 point something multiplied by 2 raised to the power something. So when this standard number, standard representation has no choice, we have to have 1 here, then why store it at all? We can just assume that 1 is always there, and we can save on storage, isn't it? That was the major design decision that led to development of a very popular computer called Microvax by Digital Equipment Corporation, and which was a very successful computer in that time. And this was called a hidden bit concept. So we just assume that 1 is always there, and that Microvax I am talking of in the timeline is sometime in 1970s, early 1970s. So even 1 bit saving was a major saving. in cumulative numerical operations if we look at it uh, from that timeline at that time. But this clever arrangement, or I would say very clever way of arranging things, lands us into another problem. If I assume that 1 is always there and these bit parts, this whatever bit values I have here, they only represent the fractional part, then even if I have all bit values as 0, that number would still be 1.000 multiplied by 2 raised to the power something, right?
Yes,
Are,
yes,
are,
sir.
are you
Yes,
getting
sir.
what I am hinting at?
Yes, sir.
Number 0 does not exist on computer. It may be a very small number, very large negative power of 2, but the number would still be 1.00000 multiplied by 2 raised to the power something negative power. That would be the number, but you can never arrive at 0 through computation on a digital computer. And this holds true on all computers, no matter how expensive your computer is. It just cannot compute 0 on floating point operation. So for base 2 number system, B0 is equal to 1 always. Implication is that absolute 0 does not exist on the number line. Interesting, isn't it? So this is how the floating point numbers are represented. So single precision format. So you all know it's going to be 4 bytes or 32 bits. So out of those 32 bits, the most significant bit is reserved for the sign bit. Next 8 bits are the exponent field, that the power of 2, and remaining 23 bits are the fractional bits, that is going to be in the fractional part, dot after the separator. The double precision, just these field widths increase. So instead of 23 fractional bits, we have 52 fractional bits. Exponent field is 11, and there is going to be one sign bit. And that almost gives you doubles the range of numbers that we can represent using double precision format. So single precision, it is precise, the precision is maintained up to 7 significant digits after the decimal places. In double precision, it is approximately 14 decimal places. The precision, the significant digits are maintained. And this one here is the hidden bit, and this is the number that is constructed. So minus 1 raised to the power s, whatever is the value here, 0 or 1, and then 1 that is always there, dot this fractional field multiplied by 2 raised to the power exponent field, whatever is the value of the exponent in the integer representation. And here we use XSK representation to represent positive as well as negative integers, because exponents, if you recall, they would only add or subtract. When the numbers are added and numbers are multiplied, numbers are divided, then the exponents field would only get added or they would get subtracted. So that has to be taken care of, and that is easily done in XSK representation.
Sir,
Yes.
can you please give an example of a construction of a floating point, like with a particular number?
Yes. Coming to that. Little patience. Then there are 4 special representations in IEEE 754 standard. So whatever is the minimum exponent field, minimum value of the exponent, one less than that is and the fractional field is 0. So this would correspond to all exponent field being 0, right? So all 8 bits 0 or all 11 bits 0 and the fraction field is also 0, then that representation is taken as plus or minus 0 depending on the value of the sign bit, right? So this is an assigned value of 0. This cannot be arrived at by computation because this is beyond the minimum exponent value. And again, if I have this all exponent field as 0 and fraction field as non-zero, then the number is represented as 0 point fractional field multiplied by 2 raised to the power minimum exponent, whatever it is there. Right? So this is what we call as subnormal representation. So again, this is not very precise number, and the loss of precision happens here. So not something that we use. It is just to utilize the one representation that is available and a placeholder. So why let it go waste? So let us define something to use. On the other hand, if the exponent field is all ones, all 8 bits are 1 and all 11 bits are 1 for double precision, and if the fraction field is 0, then that representation is flagged as infinity, plus or minus infinity, depending on the sign bit, plus or minus. And if the fraction field is non-zero and exponent field is all ones, then that is used to flag an invalid mathematical operation, NaN, which stands for not a number. So this will happen if you, for example, if you try to compute logarithm of a negative number. So this is something which is not defined mathematically. So that would promptly be flagged as a NaN, and all subsequent computation would be resulting in NaN. So if I have this toy floating point system, I use these concepts for a toy floating point system using 3-bit precision and 2-bit exponent field. So 2-bit exponent field, that means 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0 and 1, 1. Right? So what will that be exponent, what exponent field would that be? So let me just tell you that. So exponent field is going to be 2-bit. Zero, zero, 0, 1, sorry, this will be 1, 0 and 1, 1. So unsigned decimal representation is going to be 0, 1, 2 and 3. So if I shift a 0 somewhere here in between, then negative integer so this is unsigned representation, and XSK representation is going to be -2, -1, 0 and 1. So this is XS2 representation. Right? And what is the 3-bit precision? So the numbers are going to be 1.0, 0 multiplied by 2 raised to the power minus 2, 1.001 multiplied by 2 raised to the power minus 2, 1.010, 2 raised to the power minus 2, 1.011, 2 raised to the power minus 2, 1.11. Okay, let me make my life a little easier. This is going to be too long, so I just want to 3 bits. So this is 1.00, 1.01, 1.10, and 1.11. So what is this number? So these are all decimal binary coded numbers. So the weights, I mean, how do you represent numbers in a decimal number system? 1, 2, 3. This is called 123. So this is essentially equal to 1 multiplied by 10 raised to the power 2 plus 2 multiplied by 10 raised to the power 1 plus 3 multiplied by 10 raised to the power 0. Right? So this is face value, and this is face value, and this is place value. So what is the multiplier or weight of that particular positional value? So same thing happens here. Instead of powers of 10, we talk in terms of powers of 2. So 1 is always there, as I said. So we have, or let's say, so this number would be 1.1 multiplied by 2 raised to the power 0 plus 0 multiplied by 2 raised to the power minus 1 plus 0 multiplied by 2 raised to the power minus 2, and this entire thing multiplied by 2 raised to the power minus 2. So what is 2 raised to the power minus 2? That is going to be 0.25, isn't it? 1/4. So this number is 0.25, and this is going to be again 1 multiplied by 2 raised to the power 0 plus 0 multiplied by 2 raised to the power minus 1 plus 1 multiplied by 2 raised to the power minus 2 multiplied by 2 raised to the power minus 2. Right? So we have now 1.25. So this is 1 and this is 0.25. So 1.25 multiplied by 0.25. So that would be
0.3125.
0.3125. And then this becomes 1 multiplied by 2 raised to the power 0 plus 1 multiplied by 2 raised to the power minus 1 plus 0 multiplied by 2 raised to the power minus 2, 2 raised to the power minus 2. And this is equal to 1.5 multiplied by 0.25. So that is 0.375. And this number now becomes 1 multiplied by 2 raised to the power 0, 1 multiplied by 2 raised to the power minus 1 plus 1 multiplied by 2 raised to the power minus 2. So this one would be 1.75 multiplied by 0.25. So 0.43, 4375. So these are the numbers that you have, and if you look at it, these are the numbers that are presented here. Okay, so we have 4 numbers, and those 4 numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is next integer power of 2. So this is uh, what? Okay, in this case I seem to have taken -1 instead of -2. In this example, instead of -2, this excess case starts from -1, and that is how it is 0.5 here. Nevertheless, the powers might be little off, but the numbers you can see here. So these are the basic numbers that you see, and that you can see from point, instead of what we have is not from 0.5 but rather from 0.25, because of taking the negative exponent little to back, one step back, further back. But this is what you need. You need to notice that there are 4 possibilities. We worked with 4 possible numbers, and these are the 4 possible numbers. So initially this was 1 multiplied by 2 raised to the power -2. In that scale, you see that 2 raised to the power -1. So that is the only difference here. But this 0, there is a gap between here. So this is the assigned 0, and this is the smallest number that can be represented on this floating point number, right? And then there are 3 more numbers, and this is next power of 2. So the entire cycle repeats with 2 raised to the power -1. So 1.00 multiplied by 2 raised to the power -1. So this would be 0.50, and 1.01 multiplied by 2 raised to the power 1. So this one would be what? .25 multiplied by 0.5, so 0.625, and similarly 1.10 multiplied by 2 raised to the power -1, so this is going to be 1.5 multiplied by 0.5, so 0.75, and 1.10 multiplied by 2 raised to the power -1, so this is going to be 0.875. Right? So now you look at the difference. So the numbers are, the possibilities are same. These are the 4 numbers that can be represented, nothing else. So anything in between cannot be represented by this number system. It will either be approximated, anything falling in between here, that will either be approximated as this number, or it will be approximated as this number, and that is an error. That is what we call as round off error, right? And you can see that the spacing between 2 consecutive numbers, it keeps on increasing as the magnitude of the number increases. Here it was 0.1, what is the difference here? 0.3125 minus 0.25. 0.0625 is the increment here between, or difference between 2 consecutive numbers. Whereas in this case, in this particular cycle, the difference is 0.125. And this is what you can see in this toy number line. As the number magnitude increases, the spacing between 2 consecutive numbers that can be represented also increases. And this is what I meant by exponential scale. The distance between the separation between two consecutive numbers that can be represented is small when the numbers are small, magnitude is small, and therefore the round of error is small. If I operate somewhere in this range, then I also stand a chance of incurring very large round of error, and thereby uh, losing all the information for our numerical computation, any meaningful numerical computation.
Hello.
Yes?
Sir, it should be another way around, right? For large numbers, there should not be, there should be less round of the error, and for the small, there will not be means.
No, how can it be? I mean, if you look at this scale, I mean, isn't it the increment between two numbers is 1, 6 and 7. Here we are talking of increment of only 0.25. So any number in between also, so just the spacing between two accurate numbers itself is very small, and if any numerical computation happens to have a result in between, it will either be reported as this or reported as this depending on what is the round of strategy. So the error is anyway going to be less than 0.125. Either way, here the error is going to be uh, less than 0.5 either way, right? Error can be as large as 0.5. Here error can be as large as 0.125. So you are talking about 4 times increase in the error in just this almost twice scale. I mean, this is a very small number system that we are looking at, but even in this twice scale, at the two extreme ends of operation, the round of error can be off by a factor of 4. Uh, is that clear? So I'll stop here. It's already. Do you have any class after this?
Sir, I want to ask whatever means, are you going to provide these PPTs or what means we have to make notes?
I'm going to upload this video. You can refer to this video whenever, as many times as you want. And of course, I am taking these notes so that Jamboard is also available.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
And this book is of course available on Google Books. I mean, part of it is of course accessible. My book on finite element method and computational structural dynamics. So I'll be essentially following this book. So if you can lay your hands on this book, I mean, all well. And partly you can access this book on Google Books. Some chapters, I mean, some pages may be missing, but otherwise it should be there.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Any other question?
So, are the recordings of previous lectures also available?
Last lecture I did not upload because we did not cover much ground, and that is why I repeated most of it what we discussed in the last lecture. And last
Okay,
lecture
sir.
we also had a little bit of problem in recording. I mean, my session got interrupted, and after that the recording stopped. So I could not record the complete lecture anyway. So I'll start uploading from this lecture onwards.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
So, any other question?